My name is Christy Maggio, and today our co-host is Shruthi Aravindan. Hi, Shruthi. Welcome. How are you today?
Hi, Christy. I'm doing well. I'm really glad to be on with you today. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. You are such an amazing young girl. You're originally from Virginia. Now you live in Texas with your family. Your parents are originally from India, and you actually speak three languages. So tell me and tell our audience about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm 17 years old. I'm a senior in high school, and I'm the founder of Vitality Volunteers, which connects volunteers from all over the world to health and wellness organizations. And with the pandemic, we switched to a completely virtual platform. All our tasks and all our work is virtual, and we've been able to have the support of 700 volunteers from 45 countries. But outside my commitment to philanthropy and service, I also do research on the side. I mostly focus on biological research with the focus on microbiology and public health.
Okay, so wow, that's absolutely amazing. So tell me, how long have you had the nonprofit, and what made you want to start one?
Yeah, so I would say it's like about a year now. I think it'll be exactly a year in the middle of March. Um, but I've been working on launching this for a pretty long time, and when I was ready to launch is when the pandemic hit. So, I had to do that shift and everything. But initially, my idea was just to provide nonprofits with the human capital they need, because it's really hard to keep volunteers engaged and have like a regular pool of volunteers. And a lot of these organizations that are focused on health and wellness need similar help from all their volunteers. So I just figured, I feel like there's students all the time who are looking for opportunities to get involved with their communities. And this would be a great way to help both students and these organizations.
Wow, that's amazing. So you basically have a pool of people from different areas. So if an organization or someone from that area is looking for volunteers, they're able to find somebody through you?
Basically, yeah. So we have all these partner organizations that all, like, again, focus on health and wellness in the community. And they give us tasks. I send that out to our volunteers. And some of them are like group things. So we do all of that and we send it back, and it just helps the organizations with any work they need.
You now today are, your interview, you're going to be interviewing Naveen Jain. And so the crazy thing for me is that you have already in your high school career been interested and researching in what he's doing with the company Viome. So how did you get interested in that? What is it that you have been working on and doing that brings you this interest that he has?
Yeah, I think I've always just been drawn to biology. I don't really think I can pinpoint a point, like a time in my life where I was like, this is what I'm interested in. I just always been drawn to the subject. I'm always interested in learning on like how our body works on a microscopic level, and like how even like the smallest thing could make, so many things go wrong. And particularly I've been drawn to microbiology. It's just been something I've been interested in. I think seventh grade, I picked up a book at my school's library when I was living in India, and I was just entranced. And when I moved back here, I continued to devour any knowledge I could in any way possible from every source. Um, and so naturally, I'm just a person who likes to apply what I learned. So I think I was just kind of drawn to research in that way. I really wanted to do something with all my knowledge and, maybe in some way contribute to our overall science understanding or even further it in a way. And that's how I would say I got into research initially. And I've gone to publish a few of my research papers and present at international conferences. So it's just been something that's grown a lot for me. And it's something I'm really passionate about. I love being in the lab. It's my happy place. And my work directly connects with Mr. Jain's because we both focus on the gut microbiota. I focus more on how the gut microbiota can the imbalances in it could contribute to diseases or aggravate certain symptoms, and how antibiotic resistance, which a lot of people were saying is going to be the next pandemic before COVID, plays into that. And I think what Mr. Jain is doing is really, truly amazing. And I'm really excited to talk to him and get some more of his insight, because he's definitely an expert in the field. Welcome, Mr. Jain. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Shruthi, and I'm really excited to have you talking with us today. And I think first I wanted to let you know that I think your accomplishments are truly very amazing. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your history and how you started, because I think it's important for people to know that you started from very humble beginnings. And I was just hoping you could share a little bit of what you've done and how you got here and how it's been unconventional in your opinion.
Yeah. So first of all, Shruti, I want to thank you for hosting me here. And it is just one of the few things in my life I just look forward to talking to young people because you are our future. And I want you to know that many of us today look successful and it looks almost like an overnight success. And almost everyone can tell you that it comes from years, if not decades of hard work and multiple times when things just don't quite work out the way you expect them to be. And obviously, as you mentioned, I come from very humble background from India. There are times we didn't have a food to eat, we didn't have a place to stay, but to me it didn't matter. I came to this country with absolutely nothing. And I think one of the interesting thing is that when people are listening to this conversation, they say, well, that's not me. That just, I can't get there. Those were different times. It's about who you really know that brings us success in life. What I'm about to tell you is it really doesn't matter who you know, because great example is you here have your mentor, Christy. Christy didn't know me. She reached out to me on a social media. That means there is no one who is actually unreachable. So the whole idea of who you know just completely disappears. In fact, who you know doesn't really matter. So if you really want to meet someone, you want to get some advice from someone, or if you want to do business with someone, there are four things that really matter, not who you know, because you can really know you can really get in touch with anyone you want. The second thing is, do they like you? And do they like you is not about do they like you as a person, they like you, your passion, your vision, your North Star, what you stand for. And that's where the like comes from. The third part is, even if you know them and they like you, they still won't do business with you unless they trust you. And even if, so the trust comes from the fact that, are you someone that somebody can count on? Even the toughest times, when can they pick up a phone at 2 a.m. and call you because they can count on you? Do they trust you that you would absolutely do your best in what you are about to be doing, right? And the last part is the most important part to remember, that even if you may probably know a lot of people in your class, you may actually have a lot of people that you actually like, and there are many people you may even trust, but you don't respect them. And that is the last part, is until someone respects you for what you are, who you are, and they respect that you're going to get the job done, they won't do business with you. So you can have a friend who is slightly impulsive. You really like hanging out with her. You can even trust her that she will always be there for you. But when she says, I'm going to start a business and would you invest in me? You're going to say, oh, really? You're too impulsive. You're really not the person I would invest in a business, but sure, we can go out and have a cup of coffee with you, right? So my point is, and those are really the thing that matters in life, is to be able to develop a respect for what you stand for. Build so much of integrity that people will absolutely trust you, and stand for something in life. Find out what is it that you stand for, you're willing to die for. You're going to give the last drop of your blood to make it happen. And those are exactly the kind of things that will make you successful.
Wow, those are really words that resonate with me a lot. And I think elements of what you said is something I was talking to Christy about earlier, about the whole connection thing. I was talking about how, a lot of people took a chance on me. I mean, I was just this 15 or 16-year-old wanting to get into research in microbiology or just work on launching my organization. And there's so many people who just took a chance on me and believed in my ideas. And I'll be forever grateful to them. So I'm really glad that it's something you think is really important as well.
Yeah. And I want to just add a little something there too, is that integrity is key, and keeping your word is key in anything that you do in life. Like, your word is your bond, really. And I think that is truly an important lesson for young people to realize. If you say you're going to or not going to do something, that you always follow through with it. And I think that's really incredible advice. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess my next question is just what motivates you every day?
Well, again, in life, whatever you do, it doesn't matter what you do. If you don't jump out of the bed every morning, you're working on something that you don't really care about. So find something that you're so excited about that you don't hit the snooze button when you wake up in the morning. You jump out of the bed with joy, wanting to solve the problem. And a lot of people will tell you that it's all about passion. And in my world, I saw the passion is for hobbies, passion is for losers. The true entrepreneurs, people who are actually going to make a difference in the world, have obsession. They are obsessed about solving the problem. They are obsessed about believing it can be done. And in some sense, they're not limited by what other people call the limiting factors or even the sky. And I still remember when I was your age, my mom will always look to me and say, Naveen, you're so bright, you can do anything you want, sky is the limit. But guess what, she put the limit out there and saying there is a sky and there is a limit that you can achieve, without realizing that sky doesn't exist. Sky is nothing but a figment of our imagination. When you go from here to the moon, you don't say, hey, mom, I just passed the sky. The sky just doesn't exist, right? Now, imagine how many of these skies we put in our lives. Every time when we don't go there, you say, oh, because I'm a woman, that is my sky. Or because I'm young, that is my sky. Or because I don't speak like them, that's my sky. Because I don't think like them, that's my sky. It doesn't matter, because only thing that matters is what you believe in. Your belief system and your imagination is the only boundary that you have to what you can achieve in life. And I think what really happens is we stop dreaming, we stop imagining, because when we imagine, guess what happens? It makes people very uncomfortable because they can't think like that. They can't visualize your world. And you know what they call you? They call you a dreamer if they are really nice to you. Otherwise, they call you a crazy person. What are you thinking? You're too young. You're, you don't understand. You're too naive. It cannot be done. And you know what I found is, anytime you tell someone it can't be done, all that really means is you can't do it. Doesn't mean someone else can't do it. You're really reflecting who you are, and your limitations are what you tell someone what they can't do is a reflection of what you can't do, right? So I think that, day before any breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And the day after the breakthrough, it's an obvious idea. Everyone says, of course it was going to work. I knew all along people want electric cars. Until Elon Musk, when he said he's going to start an electric car company, people thought it's a crazy idea. There has not been a car company created in the United States in the last 50 years, let alone an electric car company. And now people look back and say, of course it was an obvious idea. Of course it was going to work. Of course it makes sense, right? And the point, that's the point, is every breakthrough, the day before the breakthrough, everyone thinks is crazy. The day after the breakthrough, it's just an obvious.
Yeah, I think self-limitation, self-rejection is one of the worst things you could impose on yourself. I think so many things that I've done or have in my life right now, I don't think I would have been there if I just didn't take a chance, just send that email out or just talk to that person. So I'm really glad that you agree with that as well. So what do you enjoy the most about your work?
It's to me, it's not about the work as such. It is about the mission that really what keeps me going, right? So, a lot of the people, when I was working on my company for space exploration, people would say, I am just so obsessed with space. And I just really must have been from the young time, I really was something I wanted to do. And I keep telling them, I said, that's really not what drives me. It is just one of the problem that I thought was worth solving, right? So to me, I am never obsessed with with a particular thing. I'm obsessed with how it's going to help or improve the lives of billions of people out there, right? So today I'm focused on healthcare. It's not that I was born with the passion and obsession to really do healthcare. I felt the time has now come for us as humanity to be able to take charge of our own health. We got to let go of the belief that we get sick because we have a bad luck. I really believe these chronic diseases that we develop, in fact, 90% of us develop these chronic diseases, and they're not a matter of bad luck. These are simply the matter of bad choices that we make. And these bad choices we make, not because we are making the bad choices knowingly. We just don't know what the right choices are. And that was really, to me, was a breakthrough in my thinking that what if we can create a world? What if we can create a world where being sick is truly a matter of choice? And the reason I came to that conclusion was that the human genes that really people believe that our genetics makes us who we are, those are like what I would call, people think your DNA is literally the software of life. And DNA is, to me, is like an alphabet. It can create any story you want to create. You can write a thriller with the same alphabet, and you can write a romantic poem with that alphabet, and you can write anything you want with an alphabet, right? Now, the trick really is, what story are you going to write? And those are the lifestyle choices that we make, are the stories we are writing. And what turns out is less than 5% of the diseases, less than 5% of them are fully penetrant. That means those are driven by the genetic mutations. Other 95% are actually can be controlled through many choices. Now, there are the other part of the thing. So it's not the genes that matter, it is the gene expression that really matters. So what matters is what genes are being expressed rather than what genes you have. And I think, one of the interesting things that I am not a scientist, so it's not like I understood it, but I learned all these things, was, to me, the genes and gene expressions genes are like your thoughts. You can have good thoughts or you can have bad thoughts. You can have all the bad thoughts in the world. As long as you don't express any of the bad thoughts, there is no crime. Crime happens when you express the bad thoughts. Same type of thing. You can have good genes and you can have bad genes. If you don't express the bad genes, they're going to just lie there. And that means there's no disease happens unless the bad genes are expressed. The second part of the puzzle that I think you and I are going to spend a lot of time talking about is that we as humans are really not our own genes. In fact, 99% of all the genes that are expressed in our body are not our own. And I think somebody has to stop for a second and think about what I just said. 99% of all the genes that are expressed in our body are not our own. In fact, what most people don't realize, even inside the human cell that we get from our mom and dad, there is an organelle called mitochondria. That is not our own gene. That actually in the ancient days used to be another organism that's captured inside our cell that provides energy to our cell. So when we are so proud of being human, we are basically an ecosystem of trillions of organisms with a sprinkle of human DNA sprinkled into that. And we are a walking, talking ecosystem. So, if I were to look at my life, I explore the outer space of the world, and there are trillions of these stars out there. You want to know everything, what they are doing. And then I explore the inner space where there are trillions of organisms inside us, and we want to explore how they're doing. And the interaction with our ecosystem and the external ecosystem really defines our planet, our human body. And to me, I think if we can really understand that, we can potentially find a way to get rid of all the chronic diseases.
Wow. I think that was a really great perspective to share, like how you've done like explore the largest thing and then like the smallest thing, and you just kind of have this understanding of how it works. And I think that's really great insight into your work. So talking about the microbiota, the gut and everything, what role do you see your company Viome playing in the future of health screening and early detection and, just anything related to chronic diseases in relation to the gut microbiota.
So first of all, Shruti, I mean, a lot of the people probably don't understand the term, the microbiota or microbiome or gut microbiota. Yeah. So I'm going to just spend 30 seconds just explaining what that is. So there are micro means very small, and biotics are so biotics is really the life. So it's really small living things are called microbiome. So it's really the small organism that we can't see with our bare eyes. So every time we are breathing billions of the organisms inside us. When we are exhaling billions of them out there. Now, these numbers start to sound really, people can't fathom, but there are 39 trillion or microorganisms inside our colon, inside our gut that live there. Now, 39 trillion may not sound like a large number, but let's put that in perspective. There are about 7.4 billion people on planet Earth. Now, if there were 5,000 planet Earth out there, every organism living on all 5,000 planet Earth are inside each one of us. So think about how many of them are there compared to us as humans. So when we think of them and saying, oh, they are parasite on human body, I think we should really be thinking it is their world and we are a parasite on their body, right? So now the truth is, this is a symbiotic relationship. These organisms evolved billions of years before the humans came about, right? So human body, in fact, is outsourcing many of the functions that could have been done by the human DNA to these microorganisms. So if you look at our human DNA, we really only have about 22,000. That's it, 22,000 protein coding genes. That's it. Now, many of the worms actually have more, like 30,000 or 50,000 protein coding genes. And these worms and flies, just because they have more genes, doesn't mean they are more complex. And the reason is we created this massive ecosystem where many of the things that we don't have to do because we literally are outsourcing. So for example, the human DNA doesn't know how to digest fibers. There is nothing that we produce in the human body that can digest these fibers. But guess what? We outsource that function to these microorganisms in the gut. And guess what happens? These microorganisms, we feed them these fibers. In turn, they poop out the stuff called short chain fatty acids like butyrate. That is a nutrient that our body needs, right? So literally, we are feeding them so they can poop out the right stuff called metabolites, but I call them micro poops, right? They actually, that's literally is what our body absorbs. So if anybody ever thought that poop is bad, guess what? We are a living example of actually thriving on these micro poops, right? Now, obviously, in this ecosystem, one of the things that people obviously can easily understand, the things that are inside the digestive tract. Maybe people say, oh, of course, the bloating and the obesity and potentially diabetes, these kind of things are easy to understand how gut microbiome may be involved because they absorb the food and they can actually, depending on how many calories they are extracting out of it, you can see that thing. But most people don't understand the diseases that seem far away from the gut are actually being caused by these gut microbiome. So what most people don't realize is a lot of the mental health issues or the neural diseases, so from depression and anxiety and addiction and Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease and autism are in fact directly related to what's happening in the gut. And that's connected, our gut and our brain are connected through something called a vagus nerve. And this vagus nerve is very interesting is that 9 times more signal go up to the brain than the signal that come down. So in fact, this idea that over thousands of years we have developed that listen to your gut, right? Trust your gut, right? What is that? Or you have this gut feeling, or when you're anxious, you get this tie in your gut, right? You get a stomach ache, you get these butterflies in your stomach. You don't get them in your brain. So interesting thing, I was in fact, just before this, I was just reading this paper that just came out on Nature on how the vagus nerve actually communicates between the gut and a brain, and how the fibers in the vagus nerve what actually are impacted by the metabolites or the micro poop that microbiome exudes, and that's literally sends a signal up to the brain what to do. So for example, it sends a signal when you're full, right? So, and it sends a signal when you're hungry. So think about it for a second. They are driving what, when we eat, they control what they want. So they control the desire for a certain food. They control our addiction. So I was going to give you a couple of very interesting examples, Shruti. There was a recent research that came out on alcohol addiction. They took 18 people that had a complete dependent on alcoholism. And all they did was transplant the microbiome transplant, in other words, a fecal transplant. And their desire to drink alcohol went away. So think about it. The microbiome was literally making them drink. Other example was autism. There is a woman, Professor Rosa, that took, I think, 16 kids with autism and did the fecal transplant. And even after 2 years, half of them symptoms disappeared, right? And now there is tremendous amount of studies shown around depression and anxiety. In fact, at Biome, we looked at 10,000 people and we gave them the personalized food and the personalized supplements. And what we learned was within 4 months, we were able to reduce the clinical depression score by 32% without any drug. Think about that for a second. Not a single drug is that efficacy, has that efficacy than the food alone. So when people talk about food is something you just eat to fill your stomach, or food is just simply to get energy, most people don't realize the food is the medicine. And it's not something I somehow invented. Mm-hmm. That's what Hippocrates said 2,500 years ago. Let food be thy medicine.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I'm actually working on research with the gut-brain axis and mental illnesses right now. So I had seen that alcohol addiction paper. So it's really great to know that your company is doing a lot of work on this too, because I'm trying to focus my research on connections between the gut microbiota and the brain in relation to chronic illnesses and mental illnesses. So it's a really convoluted thing right now, but it is something that's really relevant today, especially because there's so much uncertainty around the causes of mental illnesses and how to treat them. And I think any insight into the field is going to be helpful in progressing this forward and helping people, you know, overcome their mental
it's really interesting. Shruti, thank you. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was saying was that it's really interesting that when people are depressed, what happens? Either they don't eat or they eat a lot, right? So my point is there's so much connection that already exists between depression and food. And I really think if more and more people explore this idea of what's happening in your gut and what's happening in your brain, I really think that's where the solution to the mental health lies. Solution to the mental health is really not in your mind. It is really in your gut.
It's so interesting. Now, I need to come in here. When you say fecal transplant, what, like as a person that's not inside, like what does that mean?
Well, Shruti, you want to explain that?
Yeah, I think in the simplest way I can explain it is like you're basically it's kind of a transplant of bacteria from one person to another. And it is called fecal. It's not really like a fecal.
Actually, it is actually. So you literally do fecal transplants. So it's literally you taking one person's poop and actually giving it to the other person, right? So
but
you literally, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you're extracting like the microbes from that person's fecal matter and transplanting it into the next person.
Actually, unfortunately, Shruti, they don't really extract microbes. They're literally just doing the poop itself. So they literally just do the poop transfer. In fact, companies now, they have the poop pills. So you can take the poop pill, or they actually give you, when people have the C. diff infection, which is one only infection where the fecal transplant is actually illegal in this country. is they literally give you antibiotics to kill your all microbiome in your body. So they give you several doses of antibiotics, and then they actually take a healthy person's poop and essentially transplant that into you. So either you take the poop pills or they do it through enema.
How do they transplant it though? Like where do
it's like a colonoscopy. It's a colonoscopy. You put the things inside the colon. So they take the poop and they
Interesting. I had no idea. So I'm sure that when people watch this, they're going to be like I am and be like, what? That's
I know. Actually, it's very interesting. 5,000 years ago in China, it was very interesting in the Eastern medicine. When people got sick, they gave them this thing called yellow soup. And yellow soup was literally a poop of the healthy person, and they would just give them a soup to drink it.
Oh my God.
I know it kind of seems really gross, but at the end of the day, in those days, I mean, there was no other way to actually give the healthy microbiome to people when they actually have really sick, because sickness happens with your dysbiosis and your ecosystem is actually not functioning. So what you want to do at that point is to really give a good microbes, and that will actually help you take care of these nasty ecosystem.
So you're saying that by doing these fecal transplants, that it had helped in alcoholism, depression, anxiety, all of these different things.
Obesity, all kinds of things. In fact, now all these things are tied to gut microbiota. As Shruthi mentioned, that not only the gut-brain axis, the gut-skin axis. In fact, we get more people telling us that when we reduce the inflammation in the gut, through personalized nutrition. So we give the personalized supplement, personalized food for each individual, what they need. So we tell you, don't eat broccoli, don't eat kale, don't eat spinach, just because people think they're healthy. It is not healthy for you. So you need to stay away from it for the time being, because your gut microbes are actually producing inflammation when you're eating this protein, or when you're eating these spinach, kale, broccoli. These are, they are good for some people. So one man's food is another man's poison, right? And the interesting thing about that is, even Hippocrates said 2,500 years. So another statement that he made was, all diseases begin in the gut. That was, think about it. He said that 2,500 years ago, all diseases begin in the gut. So we are not inventing anything. We are simply going back to the future.
Right. It's incredible. That's just absolutely incredible. Like Socrates 2,500 years ago, the Chinese 5,000 years ago. And wow, that's like an amazing moment for me. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of ties in with what I wanted to ask you next. Like, in your expertise, where do you think the future of personalized medicine is going, and like where do we need to make improvements, and really, like you said, go back to the future and listen to our gut, like everything.
So Shruti, is very interesting is that when people think of personalized medicine, the things that pop in their mind is a capsule, right? That is not the medicine. What people forget is we take medicine several times a day, every one of us. We just happen to call that a food. And I really believe that if you can get the right set of food, the input into your ecosystem, we call our gut, right? So if you can feed the right things to it, it will have the right output, and it can modify this computer. We call this chemical factory, right? So our gut microbiota is really a fancy chemical factory. Depending on what you give it, it processes that and gives it right back to the human body, right? Now, depending on what this chemical factory looks like and what the input or the food you give it, and that really changes to who you are. In fact, what we're learning is really interesting is that many people, depending on their gut microbiome, the certain medicine may actually work for you or may be very toxic to you. It really depends on how it is metabolized by your gut microbiome. So same medicine can work for some people, but not for others. Some people, it has one side effect. Some people have a different side effect. Why is that? Even the identical twins, there was a study done with 1,000 identical genetic twins. And when they gave them the same food, they saw that they have a completely different response to the same food, even they are genetically identical. And that is really where the gut microbiome comes in. So in fact, when two people eat the same food, whether it's a bread or whether it is a banana, one person can have very high glucose response to banana and none to the bread, and some people can have completely reverse. And we know that anecdotally, some people can eat bread all day and pasta all day, and they never get fat. Some people like me can smell bread and I get fat, right? So why is that, right? I mean, just literally some people, you see them, they eat everything and they never get fat because they are able, their microbiota is actually able to actually help them with that, the glycemic response or the glucose response, right? So what we are seeing is not only that, I would say that probably the most important part of the gut microbiota, that if that's only one thing we remember from this conversation, this is it. 70% of our immune system is along our gut lining. Our microbiota and our immune system are constantly interacting with each other, right? So our microbiota is training our immune system. So when the baby is born the first time, it gets actually the first exposure to the microbiome through the mother's birth canal, right? And then the people who are not born in a natural way, they actually lack that. And there's a lot of research that shows that children that are born through C-section, they tend to have a lot of asthma and allergy and a lot of the immune-related diseases. But here's what the point I was going to make was, when the baby is born, they have this microbiota. The first few days of mother's milk contains mostly oligosaccharide. Oligosaccharide is basically think of it like a fiber that cannot be digested by human body. It's only there to feed the microbes. Now imagine what nature is telling us. I created this offspring, and the only way this offspring is going to thrive is not to feed the offspring, but to feed them who is going to feed the offspring. That means a healthy microbiota is really what is needed. And that's every time our microbiota goes out of balance, our immune system is constantly interacting. In fact, now it is shown that our microbes are involved in almost every cancer. In fact, when they do a biopsy of every tumor, they see the microbiome inside that tumor. Now they can predict whether chemotherapy or immunotherapy is going to work or not work simply looking at your microbiota, because your microbiome is modulating the immune system. And when you have a healthy microbiome, even the immunotherapy is likely to work even for cancer or chemotherapy. So it's really not only they're involved in the progression of cancer, in causing cancer, even the treatment, they're involved in what works or what doesn't work. There's very interesting research that you might really enjoy was on the Parkinson's disease that came out, I think almost a year ago. There is only one drug that's approved for Parkinson's called L-DOPA. Interestingly, that particular drug gets metabolized in some people by their microbiome. So these microbiome has produced an enzyme called tyrosine. And tyrosine actually eats away L-DOPA. So in those people, when they take a drug, when they're taking Parkinson's, it has no effect on them because their microbes are actually eating the drug. Now imagine if you can give them a certain food or certain a supplement that can absorb the tyrosine or can stop the tyrosine from producing, that L-DOPA would work, right? So that's really an interesting example that even a drug efficacy depends on what happens to the drug. The last concept that I really want us to, you to think about as you look into this research is more than the gut microbiota. What we are starting to see is oral microbiome. The oral microbiome, the microbiome in your mouth and the saliva is probably as important, if not more important, for many of the mental health and neural diseases and a lot of the gut-related diseases. So for example, when our mom would say, chew your food, was she really simply saying, use your teeth to somehow make that smaller? No, because when you're chewing your food, you're mixing the oral microbiome and the saliva into the food, and it processes the food, the pre-processes the food before it goes into your gut. And what's really happening is that there are more variety of organisms in our mouth than in our gut. Just really interesting. Even though there are 39 trillion microbes in our gut and less than 1 trillion in our mouth, but the variety is more in our mouth than in our gut. Right. Now, these several organisms that are very interesting in the oral microbiome, which are now directly linked to many of the diseases. One of the organisms is called Fuso Bacterium nucleator. It is in abundance in oral microbiome. And normally, when you eat food, it'll go into your stomach. Stomach has a lot of acid, and it will kill this microbe, and everything works just fine. Now, as you can imagine, many people are now taking anti-acid drugs, PPI drugs like Nexium. And guess what happens? It stops producing the acid. Now, these microbes are now not getting killed. All the pathogen that's coming from the food is not getting killed, and they're going into our gut. And we saw in people with IBS, IBD, which is an autoimmune disease like Crohn and colitis, and colorectal cancer, this organism is almost 500-fold higher activity in the people who have colorectal cancer. Think about that. This organism shouldn't have been there to begin with. And since a lot of people, that's the reason now you see the prevalence of colorectal cancer is happening into younger and younger people, is because more and more people are now taking these PPI drugs, right? And I think other things we found was this Bifidobacteria fragilis. It releases a toxin called BFT, the Bacteroidetes fragilis toxin, that is involved now directly into several chronic diseases. So we're starting to see that just like you have a leaky gut, that your epithelial barrier that is permeable, the microbes start to migrate into the blood. Same thing when you get the inflamed gum, the leaky gum, the microbes, when you get the inflamed gum, the blood, they bleed. Guess what's happening? The microbes are now going into the blood. And that is one of the reasons why people believe a lot of people are getting Alzheimer, because they get periodontal diseases, they get all types of oral gum inflammation. And that is another cause of many of the mental health and neural diseases.
Yeah, I think the oral systemic link is definitely something that needs to be studied in conjunction with gut microbiota. And like everything you're saying, I think the gut is just a great lens into a lot of the diseases that are increasing in prevalence, especially in younger demographics. So I guess my next question for you is, how is your company, like as a customer at your company, what can I expect to learn about, my gut health, and how is that going to contribute to, helping screen out some diseases or let me know what I'm predisposed for and stuff?
Yeah, so Shruti, so first of all, what we do is when you sign up, you go to Viome.com and you sign up for this thing called Health Intelligence. So we take several drops of blood, and then we take a touch of a stool, and then we analyze all of your gut microbiota. We analyze all the human gene expression, your mitochondrial gene expression, all the microbial gene expression in your gut. And soon we'll be doing the same thing with saliva for the oral microbiome. And then we say, okay, this is your mitochondrial health. This is your cellular health. This is your gut health. This is your immune health. This is your biological age, right? And we look at each one of them underneath it. What is causing your inflammation health to be low? Is it your histamine pathway that is high? That means you have some sensitivity and allergic reaction to food. Is it some type of viral infection? Is it some type of bacterial infection? Or is it some type of stress-related infection because you have oxidative stress, right? So in some sense, so once you do that, then we say, okay, eat these foods and why. Don't eat these foods, and here is why, based on what's happening in your body. So we say, don't take NAD. You think it might improve your life. In fact, you have a very high cellular senescence. You have very high inflammation. You should not be taking NAD because it's going to harm you. It's not going to help you, right? And then we say you need these supplements in your body that are lacking. So you need 7 milligram of elderberry. You need 11 milligram of curcumin. You need 22 milligram of amylase. You need 79 milligram of protease. And then we make those capsules on demand for each individual and ship them off to you. So we literally tell you what's in your body. We tell you what to do about it. And we actually give you everything that you need. So when you test 6 months later, you can see the improvement, because in the industry, everyone used to believe in the faith. Trust me, it works. Take a vitamin D, it's good for your immune health. Take vitamin C, it is good for you. How do I know it is good for me? Oh, just trust me. Right? Now we say, follow the science, don't follow the crowd. We literally show you, here is what's happening in your body. Take this, And when you do the second test 6 months later, you can see the changes. It's not like, is it working for you or not? That's all matters. Did it work for your neighbor? That doesn't matter. It worked for your mom. It doesn't matter. Does it work for you is what matters. Right? And that's literally what the personalized medicine is about. N of 1. So we learn from N of 1 million. So we say, this is when we did the test with 1 million people. This is what we learned. And we apply that to you. So the learnings from comes, we apply that to you. And then we see what doesn't work for you. And then we keep modifying it until we find the pattern. Oh, that's the reason it didn't work for Shruthi. And now we find other people who have the similar pattern. Now we know what to do with those people. So literally, N of million becomes N of 1. And then we learn from N of 1 that becomes the knowledge for N of million.
Wow, yeah. And I think in a world of like misinformation and just general disbelief in science, I think it's really important to show like exactly what's going on in your body and why you need to listen to like, what's right for you in a way. So I think that's really great. I had a personal question I wanted to ask you. Where do you think what role do you think your company will play in antibiotic resistance in the future? Because it's a growing problem. Some experts are saying it's going to be, kind of like a pandemic thing if we don't get it under control pretty quickly. So what role, I know the gut has like a lot of connections with it. So what do you think your company will it play a role in this problem? Like any thought?
There's several things here. First of all, if we can reduce the use of antibiotics, right? That's the first thing. So first thing we need to do is to allow our immune system to be healthy enough that it can take care of all of the incoming pathogens, right? And that's the reason why certain people, when they get flu or God forbid, COVID, they get very severely ill and some people don't. Why is that? It is their immune system. The reason the older people get more sick is because their immune system gets weaker and weaker. And we can talk about it in some other time about in terms of how we age, why we age. One of the reasons we get a lot of the age-related diseases as a weakening of our immune system. In fact, we published a paper that's coming out in Cell on biological age, that what makes us age. And the number one predictor was our CD8 T cells. This is our immune system, the things that actually finds the right pathogens, right? So our CD8 T cells, these are the soldiers of our immune system. When they get less specific and then they become weaker, that's where a lot of the age-related diseases comes in, right? So the point is, if you have a healthy immune system, that means your gut lining is tight, so you don't have a constant leakage of microbes coming into the blood. So your immune system is not fighting the battle all the time. And you don't have a leaky gum, so you don't fight all that battle. Guess what? Now your immune system can fight the flu. It can fight the COVID. It can fight the other diseases. And guess what happens? Now you don't have to take antibiotics. So the use of antibiotics comes down. Just remember what antibiotics does. Antibiotics are throwing a nuclear bomb inside your body. It gets the bad guys, but it also gets everyone else. I mean, literally, it kills everything in your body. And for many, many years, your gut is never going to be the same. In fact, just by looking at your gut microbiome, we can predict when was the last time you took antibiotics. I mean, it's that easy to see because you literally can see that, oh my God, this person take a recent antibiotic, or this person hasn't taken for 10 years, because you can see a very different gut microbiome. So I think the best way to solve antibiotics resistant is not to come up with more antibiotics, it's actually reduce the risk of antibiotics. And partly it is keeping your immune system healthy, and partly it is education. Because a lot of the times when you are sick, people naturally want to do something about it. Rather than thinking this is a virus, it's antibiotics doesn't help virus thing. And somehow people in their mind, all virus and bacteria, they all seem to be the same. They don't realize that antibiotics is only for bacteria, not for viruses. So when you have a cold, you can take antibiotics. It can only harm you. It's going to do no good. And unfortunately, in many developing countries, that is one of the biggest problems. I remember growing up when I was young in India, and the first thing when you say you're sick, the doctor gives you antibiotic. They don't really care if you have a flu, if you have a cold. In fact, I still remember that when we went to a doctor and a doctor simply said, oh, you don't need to worry about it. Go home, rest for 3 days, you'll be fine. And my dad will ask, so how much do I have to pay you? And he says, $5. And my dad will say, but you didn't give him anything. What do you mean you're asking me for money? You didn't give him anything. And you told him to go home. I'm not paying you any money. So what the doctor would say, oh my God, your son is really sick. He needs all these antibiotics. He needs all these medicine. And doctor say, look how good a doctor he is. I'll go to him. I come back with all the things. He cares about me because he gives me all this medicine versus the doctor who just simply say, go home and rest, right? And that's the problem, education problem, right? That needs to be dealt with. I still remember when you go to the pharmacy and you go with antibiotics prescription and the pharmacist will say, oh, no, Mr. Jain, that's a weak one. Let me give you the strong antibiotics. And it's just really the mind-boggling to me. It was a competition about how strong antibiotics can I give you.
Yeah. How has, the pandemic affected your work, your company, and how have you adjusted to meet these new challenges?
Well, first of all, despite all of the suffering that is coming from COVID and the pandemic, I really think to some extent it's a silver lining when it comes to our healthcare system. The pandemic has really, to me, the three things that I really look at that has the best thing that could have happened as humanity, as our healthcare system. It advanced our healthcare system almost by a decade. There was no way our healthcare system would have had telehealth for another 10 years. And because of pandemic, even the most conservative hospitals now have the doctor available on Zoom and a telehealth. That would have never happened. So to some extent, we advanced the healthcare by 10 years. The second thing that has really happened is during, before pandemic, it used to be, I do what I do when I get sick, I go to the hospital and they take care of me. Now in the pandemic, people are saying, wait a second. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to go to the hospital because when I go to the hospital, I die. I don't want to go there anymore. What can I do to stay healthy? So people are buying the immune supplements. People are eating healthy. People are working out more. People are literally now more focused on their health than they ever were. And the third thing is people are realizing that their actions have health consequences. When you go out, go to the bar without a mask. When you go out and do things that are dangerous, guess what? You get sick, right? So people are now realizing there is a direct link with their action and choices into their health. And that was never the case. People thought when you get sick, it's a bad luck. What I do is actually what I enjoy. Right? And now people are realizing that there is a connection between your health and your actions and the choices you make. So I really think one of the biggest shift we saw is people becoming the CEO of their own health. People are actually taking control of their own health. To some extent, that is the biggest change we see. And I hate to see our business actually doubled during pandemic. Right? People are more wanting to be healthy today than they were before. Right? So yes, I would never ever want that to happen to our fellow humans suffer through pandemic for our business to double. But that is really what needed to happen, was to wake up people to say, you can control your own health.
I think I agree with you. Like we all needed that push to understand that we have to make our own life choices. Like no one's really going to make them for us, and we need to be in control of what we put in our body, really. So I guess the whole like CEO thing, like what do you think is the greatest strength that someone can have as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, there are a couple of things. I mean, you have to be a leader, right? Rather than a manager. And that's really the biggest thing you learn. As a manager, your job is to manage the resources. That means you use the stick and say, you're going to get a promotion if you do this. You're not going to get promotion if you don't do this. You're going to get a bonus if you do this. And then literally you're using the resources as a thing. As an entrepreneur, you are a leader. That means your job is to hire the best, and your job is to inspire them to actually be at their best, right? Your job really becomes easy. You have to come up with a vision that people can buy into, a mission that is beyond yourself, a mission that is big enough that the greatest people are attracted to. So it's easier to solve a big problem than to solve a small problem, because the best and the brightest in the world want to work on the toughest problems. Best and the brightest want to do things that are legacy making, right? Best and the brightest want to look at the problem and saying why it can't be solved. And that means if you say, I'm going to make, like when we started Viome, we say, imagine living in a world where illness is optional. Now, that was really interesting choice of words. We didn't say, imagine living in a world where there is no illness. Because by saying that, that meant we have the power to eliminate the diseases. We didn't say that. We said we can make illness optional. That means we can tell you what you need to do to not be sick, but the choice will always be yours. And that is, to me as an entrepreneur, was very clear to us. We are going to put the burden on each individual, and our job will be to educate them. Our job will be to inspire them, but our job will never be to say, I have the power for you not to be sick. That is not something we knew we could do. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I find, at least for me as an entrepreneur, is you have to inspire people to join your mission. If you can't inspire people to really believe in the cause, your North Star, your purpose in life, then you become a sales organization. You're selling something to people. The selling should never happen. So what I tell all of our people, we should never sell our product. Doesn't mean we are not a for-profit company. We tell them, I tell our people is, we are going to educate our customers. We're going to inspire them to buy our product, but we're not going to sell them our product. And that's a difference. That means even if they don't use our product, I want them to feel that it was their decision. They were inspired to support us. They were educated to support us. Rather than if they feel that we sold them something, they always say, God, I would never do that again. The guy came and sold me something I didn't want. And I've had people, I remember speaking at this event, and I was on my knees and I said, I need your help. I need 2 million of us to come together if we can solve the problem for chronic diseases, because artificial intelligence needs massive amount of data about different people. I said, I need your help. Come join our movement to help us get rid of these chronic diseases. Let's make this up. And we had a booth there, and the people came and at a booth and wanted to give the money and said, I want to support him. And they said, whoa, he didn't really mean that way. He really meant to sign up for our service. He said, no, I just want to support him, right? And that was the thing. That means they were inspired to buy our product. We didn't say, hey, we have a gadget to sell, go buy right now. Then only 100 of them start lining up. And I remember there were 2,000 people stood in the line just to essentially support our movement. Right. Mm-hmm. And if I had told them that come buy our product, there's not a single person who would have showed up.
So in closing, what is one piece of advice you have for the younger generation who are struggling or feeling like they can't accomplish what you have in your life? Or is there like a quote you live your life by? Just any closing remarks you might have and you want to share with, people my age?
Well, Shruthi, first of all, I want to thank you for doing this. The people like you are the future of humanity. So my hat's off to you for what you do. The only thing I would say is never stop dreaming. Dream so big that people think you're crazy. Never, ever be afraid to fail. Failure only happens when you give up. Every idea that you have may or may not work. And every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea, to a bigger idea, right? So humans never fail, they simply pivot, right? So idea is to constantly find a new way of doing the things rather than saying that failed. It didn't fail. It gave you an idea of what might work, right? And last thing is never be afraid to have ups and downs in life. I feel personally that the only way we know we are alive is we have heartbeat. And what does a heartbeat look like? Up and down. So when you have these ups and downs in life, it simply tells you you're alive. And this is going to happen. When you are down, don't feel down, because you know the next beat is up. When you are up, don't ever get too arrogant, because you know the next beat is going to be down. And you never want to live a smooth life, because we know when your heartbeat becomes a smooth, you become dead, right? So when you're living a smooth life, you're living a life of a dead person. So don't want to live a dead life. So,
wow, that's very insightful. Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. It's been an incredible opportunity, and I really hope we can collaborate again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Shruthi.
Okay, so Shruthi, tell me, what did you think? How was it for you? What is your impression of that interview with Mr. Jain?
I was blown away. I mean, like, this is like, his work is what I study, and I learned so much from him in less than an hour, and not even like learning stuff, but just like life lessons to, you know, live my life by. And he's just so inspirational, and I really appreciated like his tenacity, his journey, and like he had really authentic answers. And he really just gave us a great look into where he hopes his company will be in the future, and what change he plans to make, you know, in healthcare, and just making, like he said, like making illnesses an option to people, and allowing people to take control of their own health. So I feel really fortunate to have the opportunity to talk to him.
Yeah. What about you? What do you live by, or what is something that you have that you would like to pass on?
I think it's something that a lot of really influential people in my life have taught me. And it's that there are going to be a lot of people along the way who don't believe in you or your ideas, but you're not someone else's opinion of who you are. And if you have the opportunity to change something for the better, do it. And if you don't, then create that opportunity. It's something I live my life by. And I would really like that to, you know, resonate with some people, because I really do think, like Mr. Jain mentioned several times, we are the future, and we do have the capability to create change as long as we have the confidence and believe in ourselves.
So here's one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Seuss. Why don't you tell everybody what that quote is?
Why fit in when you were born to stand out?
And you were definitely born to stand out. We all were born to stand out. So thank you so much, Shruthi.
Success. Is it really a secret? I don't think so. Join me as I interview guests from different cultures and backgrounds who have overcome incredible challenges to create the life they live today. 1,000 likes, celebrity status, lots of money, or big cars, these are things that come and go and do not define true success. So what is it? And most importantly, how do we create it? If you're a child, teen, or adult trying to understand how to achieve this word, then you are not alone, and you won't want to miss a single episode of The Secret to Success Isn't So Secret. This is Christy Maggio, and the key is right here. It's not a great secret, so don't just listen, learn, and take action.